Now we're going to talk about weighted pistols. This is one of my favorite ways to really up the intensity of pistols. Once you can do, say, 20 reps or more than that in the pistol squat, sure, you can just keep pushing reps, but eventually it does become a high rep exercise. You by all means do have the explosive things in there, which really amp up the intensity in another way, but weights are very appropriate and very easy to actually add into doing the pistol squat. You'll notice I have a couple different things here because I want to point out some very important points about doing the weighted pistols. There are different ways of holding onto the weights, and these different ways actually change the movement somewhat. We'll start with the easiest way of doing things. And let me say, kettlebells are my preferred tool. You by all means can use a dumbbell. Usually you'll hold it something like this in doing the movement, which is really going to be similar, really the same effect as holding the kettlebell by the horns. For the rest of what we'll cover here, going to use the kettlebells, not the dumbbell, but you can do it like that. You can do double dumbbells too, but it doesn't quite have the same nice rack position up here, so it's not as comfortable, but it's definitely doable. If you want, you can use a barbell with these, but I find, unless you're doing several hundred pounds and really need to load up a barbell, which I don't think most people are going to do with the pistols, I find it a little awkward holding the front squat position with the barbell, but it can be done. So kettlebells, tool of choice for this. Holding it by the horns is going to be your starting position here. And you'll notice that what we covered with the counterweight before in the previous module, you can hold it out a little bit in order to have an easier position at the bottom rather than holding it close. You can also work with the kettlebell in the rack position even with one arm. So in doing this, your abdomen's going to have to tighten up and everything. You're going to have to counterbalance the weight in a little bit of a different way. Typically, when I do this, I'm going to do the working leg is going to be holding the weight in the same arm above that. You'll notice as I come down that my elbow is coming up. The weight is still resting on my shoulder, but I'm not keeping it close to my body because gravity would want to pull the kettlebell down that way. So notice elbow up. If I'm here, I would have to be using my bicep a lot, statically curling the weight in place in order to hold it there. You can also go contralateral, go opposite side. So working leg this side, I can hold it here. In order to do this, I need to be positioning my body over. There's a little bit of a twist going on in doing this. The balance becomes harder there, lost it a little bit. Get a solid rep for you here. You'll notice that the leg actually comes out, the arm comes out in doing this. I would not necessarily go for a max in that style, but it is something you can play with. Now, you can also do double kettlebells. And I like doing the double kettlebells. I'll get to why that is in a moment. So, holding this on both sides. I can move my mic over a little bit, so I think that might hit it. So in doing this, you're going to be on one leg or the other. So of course, there's going to be some slight tilt in order to have that weighted mass over the leg. It's kind of in between both worlds of the previous one. What often happens as I'm coming up is that my elbows come away as I'm standing up. I just find for whatever reason, that's something that naturally happens in that position. Something I want to address is the first time I really started to work up in weights on the pistol squat, I noticed something was happening. My lower back tends to be stronger in proportion to the legs than I'd say most people, and a lot of that comes from doing kettlebell snatches, kettlebell juggling, round back deadlifting, which works for me, just that I have more power here than in my legs. Because of my 6'2" build, I'm not as strong in squatting. So what was happening is as I was coming up, I'd be using more of my back than my leg in the movement. And if you're holding a weight out as a counterweight, you can do more of this. So I'm gonna show you a somewhat uglier whip. This is a 70-pound kettlebell, so it's equal in weight to the 235s there, but based on how I'm holding it, it's a little bit of a different rep. So notice there, and I emphasized it a little bit there, but really when I'm working up in weight, it does look something like that. I will do a little bit of a squat and really get more in a good morning position to be able to finish the movement. I can only do this because I have that leverageable ability in holding the kettlebell that way. That is why I like to do the double pistols instead, or double weights. In the rack position, you can't get far away here. You can hold them out a little bit, but not all that much. Some other points in this, you'll notice I was using some of the tricks from earlier. I really like the static stomp before doing the weighted variations. I'm breathing in on the way down and then forcefully exhaling on the way up. Helps keep that pressure and using the whole body as kind of a hydraulic press to get out of there. I mentioned a little bit that the weights on the shoulders, for whatever reason, I find flaring my arms out a little to the side helps in this. The relaxed leg, notice that I'm doing the relaxed free leg method, that it really, I'm trying to do as little as possible on this leg, keeping it off the ground, but sometimes you end up touching it to the ground. That's okay, but really keeping that relaxed so I can drive all the force through that hip, through that glute. So really, in working with the pistols, you'll come to find these little tips that really help with you, but use what I've said here as a starting point, and you'll really be able to start to build up those weights.